All right, students. So kindly look into your notes. Today we shall be dealing with the topic fundamental rights available against state and not against private individuals. Basically, what does this statement mean? So this is basically the completely opposite of what we are studying. We were studying previously about how rights are available to citizens, right? How citizens enact upon the rights provided to them. How do they make good use of the rights provided to them? But this statement is slightly opposite to what we were studying. This says fundamental rights available against state, not against private individuals. So here, basically, we are talking about against which body it's going to be used. So it's going to be used against the state and not against private individuals. But students, the usage of fundamental rights is concerned from people's and citizens' point of view only, right? Okay. So yes, let's start reading from here. Fundamental rights. The conflict between individuals and state is old as our history. The individual's personal liberty and state has the power to decide those liberties. Thus, if the state has absolute power to cut down those liberties of an individual, it would be tyranny. Thus, individuals need constitutional protection against the state. The rights which are given to the citizens by way of fundamental rights are a guarantee against state action as distinguished from violation by the ordinary law of land. Thus, fundamental rights are against state for the protection of individuals. We'll go through this again and let me know if what is there which is basically not understandable. All right. So what does this point say? It says that the individuals need liberty and the state has power to decide those liberties, right? If individuals have a particular right provided to them, if they have a duty that they have to perform, who basically enacted that duty and right towards them? The state, right? Of liberty, right to vote, who has enacted that? Who decides it for the people? The state, right? So hence the line, the individuals need personal liberty and state has power to decide those liberties. Next, second line, thus if the state has absolute power to cut down those liberties of an individual, it would be tyranny. So all in all, a state never strikes down or takes away all the liberties that are provided to an individual, because if that starts happening from individual to individual, it will be really very chaotic and troublesome in this society. The individuals need constitutional protection against the state. So, students, as you all know, there are elements that individuals called as state. So there are basically corrupted state elements in the authority, in the government, anywhere. And the very same authority and the very same government is the body that can decide the liberties of an individual, right? So what do we need here? If we are scared at a point, if the individuals, if the citizens are scared at a point that the state authorities can disrupt with their liberties, can decide to strike down all the liberties, what do the citizens here need? The citizens need constitutional protection. And constitutional protection is basically a perfect medical aid or legal aid to citizens. Why? Because Constitution of India talks only about secularity, liberty, right? Pride, rights, duty, everything which has to be given to a country's citizen. Constitution talks about that. And if the Constitution says that children under the age of 18 cannot vote, it means you cannot vote. No elected representative can force you to vote for him, because you have your constitutional protection and your fundamental right that you shall be voting from the age of 18. Nobody is going to force you to vote before 18, that he needs to fill up his tickets, he needs to get the highest maximum votes. For that, if he's taking a corrupt way of gathering a lot of children, treating them with good things and asking for their votes, those kids are helpless. They are not yet 18. How are they supposed to vote for him? Right? So you have a constitutional protection. If he forces you, tries to use abruptive, abusive verbal force, he tries to be very harsh with words with you, still you have a constitutional protection in front of you all that you people cannot vote, right? Because the simple fundamental clause here is that you people are not 18, and citizens of India who are not 18, they do not vote, right? So do you now have an idea as to how an individual seeks constitutional protection against state, right? We don't have the fundamental given here protection against individual from an individual. It's not like that. It's basically protection against state, and that protection is basically constitutional protection which is given to the citizen. All right, any doubts here? Any doubts here? No. All right, next point: are all fundamental rights self-executory? Please note that there are certain rights in Indian constitution which don't need any legislation to make them enforceable. For example, there is no need to enact a separate legislation to make the right to equality enforceable. These are called self-executory. At the same time, there are certain rights which are imperfect in just being inscribed to the constitution and need further legislation to make them enforceable. Such rights are Article 17, untouchability; 21A, right to free and compulsory education; and 23, trafficking in human beings; 24, child labor. So basically, what we are talking about here is that whether or not the fundamental rights are self-executory in nature. Do they execute the work that they are saying on their own? So to that we have a very decent, simple answer that there are certain rights provided in the constitution which are self-executory, right? Which give out the perfect function with just by their names, and legislature has already enforced them. There is no need for legislature to make them enforceable again. So Abishi, if I say right to equality, if I say, it means equality amongst everyone, equality amongst equals, right? Is there anything that you need to imply as a government? No, right? Because when I say right to equality and 25 people are listening to me, all of them have the same idea that there has to be equal opportunity amongst equals. So Avishi, as the government authority, she doesn't have to, you know, get a legislature body and then inscribe this particular law again so that people think that it is enforceable or anything like that. Right to equality is basically self-executory. All right, but but there are certain exceptions for other kinds of laws as well. Now, as you can see, we have examples of Article 21A, Article 23, Article 24, child labor. Now, these are certain rights which are basically provided, but then it's not right to child labor, it's against child labor, right? It is right against child labor. It prohibits employees to have children under the age of 16 because it is their age to study, to grow, to learn morality, and not to be working under someone, right? So, right against child labor is something that the legislature needs to enforce again and again and again. I know, we all know it is inscribed in the Constitution of India that there is a right against child labor, but then every time there is a case or every time there is an atrocity, any sort of issue, the legislature proves or states that it has already enforced or made right against child labor enforceable and it is punishable by law. So that law is in particular not self-executory. We had to make it enforceable again. The legislature had to play a role again. And that is how we know that which of the fundamental rights are self-executory and which ones are not. So don't worry, there will not be a question in the exam asking you to differentiate between self-executory and non-self-executory fundamental rights. No, there won't be any such question like that. But then you all need to understand why and how, right? As to how and why right to equality is self-enforced, self-executed, and why right against child labor needed the legislature to make it enforceable. Basically, the implications, the application, the acting, the functions of the particular right varies from one or the other. All right. Any doubts still here, students? Anything? All right. Next, move on to the next topic. Now, please pay very good attention here. This is the main element of what all we've been studying. The first article, the first important article in Constitution of India, which is basically what? State. Okay, state. So let's go through the definition. Article 12 of the Indian Constitution states that definition in this part, unless the context otherwise requires, the state includes the government of and Parliament of India and the government and the legislature of each of the states and all the local authorities within the territory of India or under the control of government of India. Students, let me make it very clear to you all. Did I tell you people previously that a country can also be called as a state in law? Do you people remember that?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. So I had already mentioned to you people that in legal terms and in political science terminologies, state is basically notioned as a nation, right? State is a country, state is a nation, and there are also other states which is basically the subdivision of a country. What is the first subdivision of a country? Country, and then states, and then cities, right? The basic division. So, but in legal terms, it's okay. Let's not get confused. State of India is basically the country India, right? The state of India is basically the Indian country. Okay. And when it's given that the state of India contains the government and Parliament of India, and then comma, government and legislature of all the other states. Now, when it is given all the other states, it means now we're talking about Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, right? And all the other states and all local and other authorities within the territory of India or under control of government of India.